School, a place that should be a sanctuary for our future, where children learn, laugh, and dream. But in America, there are days when school hallways transform into corridors of death, when classrooms become final hiding places, and when the sound of the school bell is drowned out by gunfire. Today, we're reopening the darkest chapters in American education history. 4 tragedies that redefined what it means to be safe at school. 4 days that changed everything. 4 names forever burned into our collective memory.
April 20th, 1999, Littleton, Colorado. That morning started like any other day at Columbine High School. Over 1,900 students preparing for what seemed like just another Tuesday. None of them knew that within hours, their school would become synonymous with terror. 11:19 a.m. 2 senior students, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, arrived in the school parking lot carrying large duffel bags. Inside the cafeteria, hundreds of students were eating lunch. No one noticed the 2 duffel bags left between tables. Inside them, propane bombs set to explode at 11:17. But the bombs didn't detonate. At 11:19, when their original plan failed, they moved to Plan B. Harris and Klebold walked toward the school with weapons hidden beneath long black trench coats, semi-automatic weapons, shotguns, and dozens of rounds of ammunition. The first gunshot tore through the peaceful morning air. Rachel Scott was eating lunch outside with her friend Richard Castaldo when the first bullets hit them. Rachel died instantly. She was the first victim. For the next 49 minutes, Columbine's hallways became a war zone. Students ran for their lives, searching for anywhere to hide. Some were trapped in the library. Teachers tried to shield their students with their own bodies. Dave Sanders, a teacher, helped hundreds of students escape before he was shot. He died in a science room, surrounded by students desperately trying to save him. In the library, 56 students and staff hid under desks. Harris and Klebold entered. They walked between the tables, sometimes chatting casually, sometimes yelling, sometimes shooting. 10 people died in that library. Some were shot while hiding under desks. Others tried to run and were shot from behind. At 12:08 p.m., after 49 minutes of terror, Harris and Klebold returned to the library. They shot themselves. When the smoke cleared, 13 people had lost their lives, 12 students and 1 teacher. 24 others were injured, and thousands more would carry the trauma forever. Columbine wasn't America's first school shooting, but it was the first one broadcast live on TV. The world watched in real-time horror, and a blueprint for future tragedies had been created. The word Columbine would never mean just a Colorado town again. It became shorthand for a new kind of American nightmare.
April 16, 2007, Blacksburg, Virginia. Virginia Tech was a peaceful university nestled in the beautiful Virginia mountains. That morning, almost 30,000 students began their day, just another Monday, or so it should have been. 7:15 a.m., West Ambler Johnston Hall, a student dormitory. 2 gunshots. 2 victims, Emily Hilster, a freshman, and Ryan Clark, a resident advisor who tried to help her. Both dead in the dormitory hallway. Police arrived. They thought this was an isolated domestic incident. A person of interest was identified, Emily's boyfriend. The campus wasn't locked down. Life continued. A fatal mistake. 2 hours passed. At 9:30 a.m., while morning classes were filled with unsuspecting students, a young man headed to Norris Hall, the engineering building across campus. He carried 2 semi-automatic pistols, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and chains to lock the doors from inside. His name, Cho Sung-hui, a senior English major who had long shown signs of serious mental illness. He chained the main doors of Norris Hall shut. No one could get in, no one could get out. At 9:40, he began. Room 206, Professor G.V. Loganathan was teaching advanced hydrology. Cho entered and started firing. 9 students died within seconds. Professor Loganathan died trying to protect his students. He moved to room 207, then 204, then 211. Each classroom became a killing field. In room 204, Professor Levu Lebrescu, a 76-year-old Holocaust survivor, used his body to hold the door shut, giving his students time to jump from second-floor windows. He was shot multiple times through the door. He died, but 22 of his 23 students survived. In some rooms, students stacked desks to block doors. In others, they played dead among their friends' bodies. Some jumped from windows, accepting broken bones rather than facing the bullets. In just 11 minutes, only 11 minutes, Cho fired more than 170 rounds. At 9:51, police finally broke through the chains on the doors. They heard the final gunshot. Cho had shot himself. When medical teams finally entered, they found a scene that would haunt them forever. 30 people dead in Norris Hall. Combined with the 2 victims in the dorm that morning, 32 people lost their lives. 17 others were severely wounded. To this day, Virginia Tech remains the deadliest school shooting in United States history. The horror wasn't just in the body count, it was in the questions that followed. How did someone so clearly troubled slip through every safety net? Why wasn't the campus locked down after the first shooting? Could this massacre have been prevented? We still don't have good answers.
December 14th, 2012, Newtown, Connecticut. Sandy Hook Elementary School was a small, warm school, a place where children aged 6 and 7 learned to read, count, and play. That morning was cold but cheerful, with Christmas vacation just days away. 9:30 a.m. Most children were already in their classrooms. Rooms were decorated with handmade Christmas decorations. Teachers were smiling. This should have been a happy week. No one saw him coming. 9:35. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the school building. Adam Lanza, 20 years old, had just shot his way through the locked front entrance's side window. He wore all black, a tactical vest, and carried a Bushmaster semi-automatic rifle. Before coming to the school, he had murdered his own mother at their home. Principal Don Hawksprung and school psychologist Mary Sherlack heard the breaking glass. They immediately ran into the hallway to investigate. They never made it back. Both were shot and killed in the corridor. But before dying, Principal Hawksprung managed to activate the school's intercom system. The sound of gunshots was broadcast throughout every classroom, a warning that saved many lives. Teachers across the school heard the gunshots through the intercom. They immediately locked doors, turned off lights, and hid their children in closets, under desks, in corners invisible from door windows. In classroom 10, Miss Victoria Soto, a 27-year-old teacher, hid her 16 children in closets and bathrooms. When Lanza opened her classroom door, she stood alone in the middle of the room. "They're in the gym," she said. She lied to protect her students. Lanza shot her. Victoria Soto died, but her lie saved most of her children, but not all of them. In classroom 8, teacher Lauren Rousseau and her 14 children didn't have time to hide. In classroom 10, despite Miss Soto's efforts, some children were shot. 20 children, ages 6 and 7. They should have been celebrating Christmas the following week. At 9:40, just 5 minutes after entering the school, Lanza shot himself when he heard police sirens approaching. When police entered Sandy Hook, they found a scene they would never be able to forget. 20 small children dead,
6 adult educators dead, all within 5 minutes. Sandy Hook changed something in America's soul. This wasn't about troubled teenagers or disturbed college students anymore. This was about first graders, about teachers who died protecting their students, about innocents slaughtered. And the most horrifying part? Even this tragedy wasn't enough to change gun laws in America. Parents across the nation looked at their 6-year-olds differently after Sandy Hook. Every school drop-off became tinged with a fear that shouldn't exist. We send our babies to school wondering if they'd come home. That's not a question any parent should ever have to ask.
May 24th, 2022, Uvalde, Texas. Robb Elementary School was the heart of the small community of Uvalde, a town of 15,000 people where everyone knows everyone. 90% of students at Robb Elementary were Latino, many from working-class families. It was the second to last day of school before summer vacation. Kids were excited, teachers were tired but happy. Summer was just around the corner. 11:28 a.m. An 18-year-old named Salvador Ramos crashed his pickup truck into a ditch near the school. He had just shot his grandmother in the face. She survived. Now he walked toward the school carrying an AR-15 rifle. 11:33. A teacher at Robb Elementary saw the armed man. An alert was activated, but there was a problem. A back door to the school had been left propped open. Ramos entered without any resistance. And this is where the tragedy becomes something darker. This isn't just about a shooter. This is about a horrifying systemic failure. 11:35. Ramos entered connected classrooms 111 and 112. Inside, 33 third and fourth graders and their 2 teachers. He began shooting. Police arrived 3 minutes later. By 11:38, there were 7 police officers in the hallway outside the classrooms. They could hear gunshots. They could hear children screaming. But they didn't go in. For 77 minutes, police stood in that hallway. 77 minutes. While inside the room, children hid under tables covered with party tablecloths. While wounded children bled on the floor calling 911 begging for help. A little girl, Chloe Torres, called 911 at least 5 times from inside the room. "There's 8 or 9 still alive," she whispered. "Please send the police now." But the police outside waited. The commander on scene decided this wasn't an active shooter situation, but a barricaded subject. They waited for a tactical team. They waited for a master key for the door, which turned out to be unlocked. They waited for a plan. Meanwhile, parents gathered outside the school. They screamed at police to go in. Some tried to enter themselves and were detained. One mother, Angeli Rose Gomez, was handcuffed by U.S. Marshals when she tried to enter the building to save her children. At 12:50 p.m., 1 hour and 15 minutes after the shooter entered, a tactical team finally breached the door and shot Ramos. But it was too late. 19 children, ages 9 to 11, and 2 teachers who tried to protect them. 21 lives lost. Eva Morales, one of the teachers, died in the arms of her husband, who was on the tactical team. He could only enter after more than an hour of hearing his wife dying inside. Later investigations revealed systemic failures at every level: unlocked doors, poor communication, inadequate training, and complete leadership failure. Uvalde was a double tragedy. The first tragedy was the shooting itself. The second tragedy was the police response that turned an incident into a massacre. Some children who could have been saved bled to death while police waited outside. For parents in Uvalde, the nightmare didn't end with the shooting. It continued with the knowledge that their children might have survived if the people sworn to protect them had acted. That's a different kind of horror. One that keeps you awake at night, asking what if over and over again.
4 schools, 4 different days, 4 different generations, but one commonality. In America, schools are no longer completely safe spaces. Since Columbine in 1999, there have been over 350 shooting incidents at American schools. Hundreds of lives lost, thousands injured, millions traumatized. Children in America now routinely practice active shooter drills. They learn how to lock doors, turn off lights, and stay silent in darkness. Teachers attend training on how to shield students with their own bodies. Schools are fitted with metal detectors and automatic lockdown systems. This is the reality of American education in the 21st century. Columbine taught us that ordinary teenagers could become monsters. Virginia Tech showed us that large campuses aren't immune. Sandy Hook proved that even the youngest children aren't safe. And Uvalde revealed that sometimes what kills isn't just bullets, but incompetence and system failure. We remember the victims: Rachel Scott, who dreamed of becoming a missionary; Dave Sanders, the teacher who died saving his students; Professor Labrescu, the Holocaust survivor who died a hero; Victoria Soto, the young teacher who lied to protect her children; Irma Garcia, the teacher who died protecting her students, whose husband died of a broken heart 2 days later; and the 68 other victims from these 4 tragedies, and hundreds more from other incidents. They weren't statistics. They were human beings with dreams, families, and futures stolen from them. The question is no longer, can this happen again? We know the answer. The real question is, when will we care enough to prevent it? Because somewhere in America today, a child is going to school, and either they or their parents have a small fear in the back of their minds. What if today is the day? That shouldn't be a question any child has to answer. If you or someone you know is experiencing thoughts of harming yourself or others, please reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. For resources on gun violence prevention, visit organizations like Everytown for Gun Safety, Sandy Hook Promise, or Moms Demand Action. These tragedies don't have to keep happening, but change requires all of us to act.